Senior Bowl. Where right now you've got this on in your setup. Give me your Senior Bowl setup right now as we do this podcast. You're probably ignoring me, watching routes. What is this? Seriously? What does this week mean to you? And what does it mean for the players, obviously, moving forward?
Yeah, this is one of my favorite weeks of the year because I love watching these drills because it's the first time we get to see guys from the MAC or small school go up against Alabama and Ohio State guys on the other side of the field. It's a lot of fun. I'm watching practices at home this year on my TV. I got a hookup to watch the All-22 film in my office. So a great week for me. It's even more important, obviously, for the players. Again, this is the last on-field thing they're going to do until they're drafted. We'll see about the status of pro days. No combine this year. So for a lot of these guys, and especially for the players that opted out of the 2020 season who are now participating in the Senior Bowl, this is their one big chance to show what they've been working on over the last 12 months.
So we're going to be covering the draft process like crazy, but you hit on a couple of points, which I think, you talk to people around college, around the NFL, the importance of the Senior Bowl has really grown over the last 3 to 5 years. Like the significance of this, the way guys can completely rework their draft trajectory, the fact that they even participate is a good thing, right? Like just by being there for a lot of guys, it's a check mark, is it not? Like,
yes.
Because that used to not be the case. They had a hard time drawing top names.
Not even 5 years ago, it was a huge deal if you had one first-round pick at the Senior Bowl. And now all the top seniors in the country are expected to play in the game. And Devontae Smith is there. Now, he's now actually not participating, but he is at the Senior Bowl. Najee Harris, Mac Jones, a bunch of offensive linemen who could go in the first round. So this has become a really big deal, and credit to Jim Nagy for organizing it, for making this really a spectacle, and it's a lot of fun. We've seen over the last couple of years, Adam, a lot of guys really raise their stock. The one that comes to mind is Baker Mayfield, right?
Yep.
Entered the week in 2018 as maybe a fringe first-round pick. By the time the week was over, we were talking about him in potentially the top 10. Ended up being the number 1 pick. We've seen it work well for guys like Josh Allen, for Justin Herbert last year, Daniel Jones. It's a big week for these guys.
All right. And Jim Nagy, he's done an awesome job. Great dude, has done a great job. They do a great job there, and they're doing it amid, obviously, a unique year and challenging circumstances. I saw he posted his binder the other night of all the negative COVID tests. It
incredible.
Like 4 encyclopedias stacked up on each other. So hopefully these guys have a great, healthy week. So, all right. Let me start this because there's so many ways I could go with this. Give me a top player, a player who's going into this week, high status, high draft appreciation, a guy that will go in probably the top 15 to 25 picks that will solidify, you believe, their status amongst the elite college football players, now NFL football players in the country.
Yeah, that's a really good question. And I'm looking at the offensive line. I know that's not the sexiest position in the world, but the Senior Bowl offensive line drills, you could tell a lot right away because we get one-on-one stuff. We get a lot of run blocking stuff. So Alex Leatherwood, the offensive tackle from Alabama, I'm curious to see if he can stick at offensive tackle, was dominant in college, might not have the feet to stay at left tackle, but we shall see. Liam Etchenberg, a left tackle from Notre Dame, another highly rated prospect. And then Mac Jones, a potential first-round pick at quarterback, working with the Carolina staff who own the number 8 pick with a strong week. We know Carolina's looking for a future franchise quarterback. Could he potentially be, the Panthers pick at number 8? It's going to be fascinating to see how it plays out.
I'm glad you brought up Leatherwood because I thought that was a guy. So many talented, obviously, Alabama players, and the offensive line is full of them. Obviously, when you look at center, you look at Neal, but Leatherwood was great, moved around a little bit. I think you're right. I think his draft stock and appreciation, if they think he can hold up at that spot, they'll keep him there, and obviously that will be helpful for him. But just physically, that guy
85 and a half inch wingspan.
I mean, he is 6'6" too. Like that guy
8'12",
is.
Yeah.
That's how you build it. Like that's an offensive lineman. Like that's the created offensive lineman. So interested to see. Also, Najee Harris, by the way, Marcus, to bring up guys that I think will cement their status, weighed in at 230, like a legit 230. Look, we said that all the last couple of years, like, hey, he's 230 pounds. For him to actually come in and look that, I am curious to see at what point what he runs. I'm not sure it really matters.
No,
I
no, no.
I just man, I love ETN. Two very different running backs. I mean, Najee Harris can't catch the way ETN can, but it's close. I think he's going to have an insane week. I just am enamored with the physical talent that is Najee Harris.
Yeah, somebody who's gotten better every single year at Alabama is leaving Tuscaloosa with a lot of the records for running backs there. Got quite a bit better as a pass catcher. So you're starting to see some Le'Veon Bell comparisons, similar height and weight coming out of school. Both can make plays out of the backfield as receivers. I kind of like that comp, Adam. I think that makes a lot of sense.
All right. So what about a guy or whomever, maybe multiple, that you think is under the radar and has a chance to break out here? Because when I think of Senior Bowl week, this is what I think about, right? You're lining up, you mentioned it, the small school guys with the big school guys. And these are where you start to get some really good buzz names that jump out. So what are a couple of guys that you think could jump out after this week?
Yeah. So one of my big takeaways from the NFL this weekend was you need to have speed. What Tyreek Hill and Mecole Hardman do for the Chiefs is just unbelievable. And it makes defenses have to cover every blade of grass. So NFL teams are going to be looking for guys that can make those type of plays. And I've got two of them here at the Senior Bowl. Dwayne Eskridge from Western Michigan, 5'9", 188, runs in the low 4.3s, averaged over 23 yards per reception in his college career. Just an absolute burner. And before we got on the show, I was watching some of the one-on-one clips. Not surprisingly, there's not a cornerback in Mobile right now that can cover him. Lightning quick. I expect him to have a monster week. And then Marquez Stevenson from Houston, another smaller school receiver, 5'10", 180 pounds small, but a legit 4.2 guy that can run routes, that can make plays in the air on contested passes. I think those are both top 100 picks and guys that could be instant starters right away for their respective teams.
We were talking before we came on about wide receiver as a whole. It's a ridiculous group, I think, this year. When it comes to, Tylan Wallace is a guy that at Oklahoma State had 1,400 yards receiving, had an injury, had a good year this year, of course, opted out in the middle of the bowl game, which, hey, good on him, man. You got to make that business decision. But that's a guy and he's not necessarily a guy that's going to emerge. That's a guy that's emerged. But the depth wide receivers. So you mentioned a couple of guys that you think could break out. What position group are you most excited for this week? Is it wide receiver? And I guess in the draft process as a whole.
Yeah, I think wide receiver is one that I always like watching no matter who's out on the field. So, I mean, again, there's a ton of guy between Kadarius Toney, who's maybe a first-round pick. I like Nico Collins a little bit as a day two guy from Michigan. But I'm looking at the linebackers. There's some really interesting linebackers here. Chaz Surratt from North Carolina, a former quarterback that's transitioning to linebacker, super athletic. He's somebody I'm keeping an eye on. Tuff Borland from Ohio State. Charles Snowden from Virginia, 6'6", 236 pounds. Just incredibly long and athletic. Baron Browning from Ohio State. So it's a unit with a bunch of different guys and different shapes and sizes, but a lot of talent there in Mobile.
All right. So the last one I'll ask you, of course, you mentioned Mac Jones. And we know about Mac, of course, but could really help himself because that's a guy that could go probably as high as 8, maybe even higher. Who knows if he plays well, but needs to play well. Is there another quarterback that you are interested in? And not necessarily in a way that says like, hey, this guy's going to be a star. And I'll give you mine. I mean, Jamie Newman has had a wild career.
Right?
Okay. So when you look at Newman, I'm not sure how much you've studied him. I've obviously watched him up to this year. Really talented, opted out. And I think that'll be a story from this because we haven't seen this guy in a while. We don't know what he's been doing for a year. So I guess is your guy Newman, and what are your thoughts on him heading into this week?
Yeah, I think that's the guy because, again, was at Georgia, didn't play. It's been a long time since we've seen him, but the physical tools are there. 6'2", 235, strong arm, athletic, can make, plays in and outside the pocket. But, again, we need to see him be accurate. We need to see him throw on all three levels of the field. Just not a very big sample size. I think he really hurt himself by opting out and not playing this year. I think he's trying to get himself into that third, fourth round range. But that is the guy that I'm paying attention to.
The other one, I think overall, I'm very interested to see what the draft process does is Felipe Franks, because if you've ever watched him throw a football, it's art. It is like the guy can throw the hell out of it, but there, you know, it doesn't always go where you want it.
And he's the
Which is
opposite of Newman, right? He's been
he
around
is.
forever.
He has. He's had injuries. I thought had times this year where he played well, but that's a guy. Both of those guys, and this is the scouting process as a whole. If you impress just the right people, right? It only takes one. It only takes one. And if you have a good day or a good sequence and they think it's enough, that's all it takes. So I actually, you know, it's not necessarily the star power of the Trevors and the Zach, you know what I mean? But there's still guys there that can really help themselves.
Yeah, and I think even somebody like an Ian Book could stick around as a backup in the NFL. I mean, doesn't have any elite traits, but won a bunch of games at Notre Dame, does seem to make some plays. Sam Ellinger from Texas, I don't love, but a guy that'll probably be drafted sometime on day 3, and wouldn't be surprised at him if he sticks around in the league 10 years as a backup.
He's going to make like $45 million as a backup. He's going to
Chase Daniel.
Yeah, exactly. All right. Well, we'll talk plenty more draft stuff. It's actually, we both geek out on this. We're looking forward to that.